All right, I think we're live. So hopefully the microphones are plugged in. The internet connection is good. Everything is strong, and I believe we're ready to go. I hope you can hear me. I would like to see you. It's the Panther-Lair Show on a Wednesday night. A little bit closer to our usual Panther-Lair studios. Not quite entirely back yet as we continue our work here in the Panther-Lair home offices, but we're a little bit closer. A more typical backdrop that you're used to seeing, the plain wall. Little picture on the wall there, but that's something else to look at. Of course, we got the photos on the side. You can look at Pitt football photos there. You got the headlines up in the upper corner. That's hopefully enticing you to go look at Panther-Lair.com to read what we've been writing about lately, and then a little Day of the Dead action with the poster up in the corner. But welcome to Wednesday night. It's 8:30 p.m., and you know what you need to do on Wednesday nights at 8:30 is get together here on the Panther-Lair Show for an hour of Pitt sports talk, and quite frankly, the best Pitt sports talk you're going to find. This is an hour of unadulterated, unfiltered Pitt sports talk. There's nothing else. We're not going to bother talking about any other sports. We're not going to talk about the Penguins. We're not going to talk about the Pirates. We're not going to talk about the Steelers. We're not going to go off on tangents about nonsense topics that try and drive radio calls. We're just going to do our show and just talk about Pitt sports. Isn't that a novel concept? A show that's all about Pitt sports by people who follow Pitt and cover Pitt all day, every day. Write for the website that covers Pitt all day, every day, Panther-Lair.com, for people who follow Pitt and read about Pitt and think about Pitt all day, every day. It's the Panther-Lair Show. Of course, the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, we cover it all at Panther-Lair.com. And we have the message boards where you can find the biggest and best online community of Pitt sports fans. They're dedicated at Panther-Lair.com. They're committed at Panther-Lair.com, and they're always on there talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and it's been another busy. It's always a busy week. I feel like it's such a. I mean, cliche is the obvious word that jumps. Cliche. To say cliche is the cliche here. But it's such an odd, it's a repeated thing that I say every week. And I know that. And I know sometimes people make fun of, when I say you can go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and hang out with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. I know people get a kick out of that and find that one funny. I know people laugh. They sort of repeat the same taglines about the site all the time. And I think I always sort of almost inevitably segue into, and it's been a busy week on Panther-Lair.com. But the reality is it's been another busy week. There's new football recruiting offers going out, new official visits getting scheduled, and then basketball picking up a new commitment. Another transfer, Marquette guard Greg Elliott committed to Pitt Tuesday? Yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I think it was Tuesday. He committed to Pitt. Added another transfer, another veteran player to the mix for the Panthers, bringing the current scholarship projected total up to 11. So they have two open spots to work with. And, I think there's a couple options on how they could go with that, on which direction they could go as far as filling those spots. But I think when you look at what they've got right now, if you just start off with the 11 that they have set to be on this team, either returning, coming in as transfers, or coming in as high school recruits, and there's a mix of all of those. I mean, you see this roster coming together. And there are a few things that stand out that I think when you look at the Pitt basketball roster as it's currently constructed to come together. I mean, the first thing is that there's still a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions. I have questions about how these guards are going to work together. I have questions about what they're going to do at the power forward position. I have questions about the backup center. I have questions about the shooting. But you're starting to get it. It's filling in. It's coming together. And it's been it's been a process of building since the season ended, of trying to get transfers, trying to bring in guys at key positions, landing this transfer, missing on that transfer, and continually working to put this thing together. And with Greg Elliott on board, you've got 5 guards now. You've got Nelly Cummings, the transfer from Colgate. You've got Jamarius Burton, Nike Sabandi, Greg Elliott, and Nate Santos coming back. So you have 5 guards to work with. And each guy is sort of a little bit different. Nelly Cummings is probably your point guard. I think Nike Sabandi and Jamarius Burton are both kind of combo guards. I don't know how much you're going to want them with the ball in their hands. I don't know if you're going to want them bringing the ball up the court or trying to run the offense. I think Cummings is going to be the main guy for that role. And he's going to have to work with Burton and Sabandi, because I imagine you'll see all three of those guys on the court a fair amount. And then you find a way to work Greg Elliott in, a guy who could play the 2 or the 3. You find a way to work Nate Santos in as a potential shooting threat, because this team is going to need guys who can shoot. So you've got 5 guards there with varying degrees I shouldn't say varying degrees of experience. Nate Santos is a second-year player. Everybody else is like a fifth-year guy. Cummings, Burton, Sabandi, Elliott. These are all veteran players. And maybe that's the most striking thing about the backcourt right now, as it's constructed, is it's Nate Santos and a bunch of like fifth-year players, a bunch of veterans who have been around basketball a long time and been around college basketball a long time and played a lot of college basketball. Nike Sabandi, of course, has missed time, missed all of last season due to injury. Greg Elliott missed his sophomore year due to injury. Those things were, that was a while ago. Sabandi's the one who's missed time most recently. But you're looking at a very veteran backcourt right now. It'll be interesting to run the numbers on how many games played those 5 guys have. Really, just those 4, because Nate Santos, his experience is pretty much limited to last season, and he didn't get that much playing time. But you got this veteran backcourt, and then you start trying to find a way to fill out in the forwards. And this is one of the more notable things to me right now, is when we went into this offseason, there were a couple key targets, not even just targets, but a couple key goals, key things that Jeff Capel had to accomplish, right? He had to find a power forward in the transfer portal. He had to find a backup center. Well, he needed John Hughley. He needed to make sure he was going to keep John Hughley on board, and then he needed to find a backup center, and he needed to find some shooting help. And I'm not sure how much he did with any of those things aside from keeping John Hughley on board, which I think we knew pretty early on in the offseason was going to be the case, that they were going to keep John Hughley for at least one more season at Pitt. And we'll get to the shooting in a second, but I just don't believe that as it's currently constructed, the power forward depth is what the coaches set out for at the beginning of the offseason. I have to think they were hoping for something more, hoping for a veteran power forward who could come in with experience and really just step into that position, pretty much like Mo Gee did. And, I think ideally they'd like to find somebody who wouldn't even be maybe as much of a surprise as Mo Gee was. I think Mo Gee was a surprise in what he was able to contribute offensively. I think they knew they were getting a great defensive player, but I think his offense was a bit of a surprise, particularly the way, they knew he had some skills, but I think the way it translated to the ACC was a bit of a surprise, even for the Pitt coaches, who were certainly optimistic about him. So I think they were hoping to find someone who would be even less of a lottery ticket than Mo Gee, be even a little bit more of a sure thing than he was. And they were unable to do it. They really didn't do it. Now they've got 2 spots left. Maybe they could still pull a rabbit out of the hat. But they really kind of failed on getting that veteran ready to play power forward. And what they got was Blake Hinson from Ole Miss by way of Iowa State, where he didn't really play. 6'7" player. He's not going to be a Mo Gee, type of body on the court at the power forward position. And really he's a guy who's played some 3 and some 4 in his career, and I think probably was hoping to play a little more 3 than 4. But as it currently stands, there aren't a lot of other options to put in at that power forward spot other than Blake Hinson. And so he almost by default, I think, ends up being your starting power forward, which is probably not what you were counting on, or probably not what you were hoping for. I think if you were the Pitt coaches when you headed into this offseason. Now, they did sign the 2 freshmen, Jorge Diaz-Graham and Guillermo Diaz-Graham. And I think those guys, I think could potentially play power forward. Jorge could potentially play power forward. But I don't know if you want to rely on a freshman to get the bulk of your minutes at that spot. So I think what ends up happening with this roster the way it's currently set up is that you're going to see a lot of 3 guards with Hinson and Hughley down low. And then, whatever you can get out of your reserve guards and your reserve forwards will allow you to rotate more. And that's probably one of the big things about this roster right now. It's at first blush, as we sit here on May 18th, kind of debating this and discussing it and thinking about it and tossing it over. It's really, it appears to have more depth than last year's roster did. It appears to have more opportunity for rotation, that you're not going to just have to rely on like 7 guys every night and 6 of them play almost all the minutes and guy number 7 plays like 4 minutes or something, which was all too often the case last season. You should be able to go a little bit deeper. You should be able to get a real rotation of 8 players here. I think if you look at just the 4 veteran guards of Cummings, Burton, Sabandi, and Elliott, and then you look at, Blake Hinson and John Hughley, as I mentioned, you're at 6 right there. So you need to find minutes, or you hope you can rely on guys like Will Jeffress, possibly the twins, the Diaz-Graham twins, one or both of them, Nate Santos, and then maybe even Fede Federico, who we haven't mentioned yet, is pretty much your backup center. Ideally you can get quality minutes out of those guys, get enough quality minutes out of those guys that you can rotate and move guys around and not maybe wear down quite as much as you did last season because you've got more depth. But I don't know. I don't think they satisfactorily addressed the power forward position, and I don't think they satisfactorily addressed the backup center. Fede Federico will have to do as a JUCO player. Shooting is kind of interesting, though. They didn't add, they were on the kid from the Citadel who was like a super shooter and all this stuff. They were on a couple of these different high-end three-point shooters. And they didn't get those guys. But they got Nelly Cummings and they got Greg Elliott and even Blake Hinson to some extent. Blake Hinson last year, I think for his career is a 33% three-point shooter. Okay, if he's playing the 4 and he's shooting 33%, there's at least a bit of a threat there. Looking back at Mo Gee last year, he shot 36%. So, only a little bit better than Blake Hinson is shot. So, maybe you have an opportunity there to stretch a little bit. And that's really what you're looking for with the shooting on this team, is not just to get a couple guards who can shoot it, but get a little bit out of the forward positions to be enough of a threat that you can stretch the defense. The defense has to respect those players and their ability to shoot it from outside the arc. And Jorge Diaz-Graham was a guy who shot 44% from 3 last year. And so as a freshman, now, is he going to be ready to play? Because Nate Santos was a sharpshooter coming out of high school, and he wasn't ready to play, at least not enough that the coaches would trust him last season. So is Jorge Diaz-Graham going to be ready to play? I don't know. That's up in the air. But if he is, and he can come in and give you some quality minutes and make a few shots from 3 to stretch the defense, to force the defense to respect all of your players on the court, or respect at least one more than they would have otherwise, and guard him out to the 3-point line, now you're going to open things up. You're going to loosen things up for John Hughley, who remains your best weapon on this team. Now, as far as shooters among the guards, they didn't add that sharpshooter, that guy who's 43%, 44% career shooter or something like that. Greg Elliott, 40.9% career shooter. Pretty good numbers. Last year, 38.6% from 3, and that would have been, the best number on Pitt's roster. I know Chris Payton was 1 for 1, so he shot 1,000% from 3. But of anybody who attempted more than one 3-pointer, Greg Elliott at 38.6% would have had the highest percentage on the team. And I've talked about on Panther-Lair.com, I've written about how Elliott was kind of a low volume shooter, and that's part of it. That he isn't. We'll see how he can handle having a higher volume. He attempted 88 3-pointers last year, and incidentally, the previous 2 seasons he was over 40% from 3. But this past season he attempted 88, shot 38.6%. If you look down, those 88 attempts would have been 3rd most on Pitt's roster last year. Mo Gee attempted 118. Femi Odikale attempted 91. Ethiel Horton, who shot 37.9%, attempted 66. Now, Ethiel Horton only played in 13 games. He probably would have well eclipsed Greg Elliott's numbers, but it's not entirely a volume thing with Greg Elliott. I do think he'll have an opportunity for higher volume of shots at Pitt than he had at Marquette. But, because what I said, he attempted 66 and he played in 28 games. So, I mean, you're only looking at, 3.1? Or he attempted 88, excuse me. He attempted 88 three-pointers. So he averaged 3.1 three-point attempts per game. I think he could probably push that number up a little bit. And if he can maintain that efficiency number and still shoot in the 38 to 39 to 40% range, now you've got legitimate shooting threat from outside that more or less offsets the loss of Ethiel Horton. And then Nelly Cummings is not a bad three-point shooter. He's a guy who shot 36% from three last season. It's not great, but again, you're looking at what did he average? 5.4 three-point attempts per game. So he's willing to throw the shots up. He hits it at 36%. That's a high enough percentage that opponents are going to have to respect that. And then you get the occasional three from a Jamarius Burton or a Nike Sabandi. Maybe Nate Santos comes on a little bit. Maybe Will Jeffers eventually becomes the 3-and-D guy that Jeff Cable envisions for him. There's potential here. Not necessarily to be a team that kills you from three, but to be a team that hits enough threes to force you to respect it. And that might be the thing that Pitt needs the most, because their biggest weapon, their best weapon, is John Hughley. He's going to be the guy who makes this whole thing go. And the best thing you can do to help him is draw attention away from him. And the best way to do that? Hit a couple threes. Be just good enough at threes to be dangerous. Don't be great at threes. I mean, you should be great at threes if you can be. If you have the guys to do it, then absolutely, by all means, go out and be great at threes. I'm saying you don't have to be great at threes. You just have to be good enough that the other team watches out for it. And the other team backs off of John Hughley and gives you the space, gives him the space while they're trying to defend out to the arc. If you can do that, then Hughley can go off. And I fully expect there are a lot of there's a lot of guesswork, there's a lot of hypothesis, there's a lot of just sort of projections when we talk about a lot of different elements of this team. If Greg Elliott can do this, if Nelly Cummings can do that, if the Twins can do this, if Blake Hinson can do that, I'm fully confident that John Hughley is going to be even better dealing with double teams and the kind of attention he's going to get this year than he was last year. And there were times last year when he struggled with it. I think he'll be even better this year at it. So when teams do double him and teams do pay extra attention to him, he's going to be able to handle it he's going to handle it really well. And then if Pitt can just hit a few threes, they can get Nelly Cummings to knock a few down, or Greg Elliott to knock a few down, or Nate Santos, or Blake Hinson, or Burton, or Samani. Draw some of that attention away. Be a threat from three, which Pitt really wasn't last year, particularly with Ethiel Horton on the bench for as long as he was, or not even on the bench, not even on the team for as long as he was. Be a threat from outside. Now, somebody asked me on the message board, as we were having a conversation about what this team looks like with Greg Elliott and how the rotation could look and what guys' different roles would be, somebody said, all right, Chris, is this an NCAA tournament team? I have no idea. I have no idea if they're a tournament team. There's no way for me to project that. And to be honest, let's just start with winning more games than you lose. I mean, sure, making the NCAA tournament would be great. But first things first, you got to win more than you lose. You got to get a winning record. You got to find a way to make this lineup that, I wrote down, I took all my notes, so I was prepared for it. You got to find a way to make this lineup win more games than they lose. Not lose 12 games in February. Not blow a couple non-conference games that they should win. You got to start there. You start off with a winning record. You get on the NIT bubble or maybe make the NIT, and then you get on the NCAA bubble and make the NCAA. Or you turn it all around in 1 year. But let's just start by winning more than they lose. All right? Let's set that as a goal. Can this lineup do that? I don't know. I really don't know. I think John Hughley's great, but I need I need Nelly Cummings to do some very specific things. I need Jamarius Burton to do some very specific things. I need Nike Sabandi to do some very specific things. I need Greg Elliott to do some very specific things. I need Blake Hinson to do some very specific things. And I need somebody else out of this group of Santos, Jeffers, Diaz-Graham, and Federico, plus whoever else they add in. I need at least one or two of those guys to do some very specific things in order to start counting on this team to have a winning record and push into that next level. I'm not there yet because there are a whole lot of ifs included in those sentiments. Let's check out the live stream in the chat and see what people are talking about here. What's going on? Anthony Tennyson says, "What's up, Chris? I hope you had a great day so far." You know, Tony, you win some, you lose some. Strikes and gutters every day, right? Let's see here. Mike S. says, "How many recruits are committed on June 30th?" All right, so this is interesting. So we're coming up to June, right? What is it, May 18th? We're less than 2 weeks away. We've got, goodness, I should have counted this. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, 23. 23 official visits are currently on the books for Pitt in June. Confirmed, ready to go. There'll be more added. It'll probably be more than 25. Might even be up to like 28 or who knows. Might even be 30. And maybe one or two of these will get canceled or moved around or something like that. You're going to have a ton of commitment, a ton of official visitors in town. And you guys know what that means. When you get recruits visiting, you're taking official visits, you're going to land commitments. This is what happens. It's happened, 3 years in a row heading into this year. This will be year number 4. I feel like 2019 was the first year. Or was it 2018? Is this the 5th year of the... hold on, let me see how many years we've been doing the June official visits. I don't think the class of 2018 did it. No, class of 2018 did not take June official visits. Let's see if the class of 2019... I think class of 2019 did, with Davis Bevel and those guys. Yep. Class of 2019 was the first one to take June official visits. And the results were, mind-blowing. It was the Father's Day massacre, and what got massacred was my Father's Day celebration because I spent the whole day trying to track down the 8 or 9 commitments that they got that day. And that's been the case every year. Shout out to Pitt this year for not having an official visit weekend on Father's Day, or maybe they just set it up so that the official visit weekend is, I think they set it up. Yeah, they do not have an official visit weekend on Father's Day. So they have the weekend after, they have the weekend before. Or no, you know what? They do have it on Father's Day. No, they don't. They do. All right, I'm going to stop going on this. But what they're doing, though, is they have it from Thursday to Saturday. So as opposed to Father's Day official visits ending on Father's Day, Sunday, when all the commitments would be, and it would ruin not ruin our Father's Day, but make us have to work a lot on Father's Day. They're doing it now Thursday to Saturday, so all the commitments and news will come out on Saturday. To the question, how many commitments is Pitt going to have on June 3rd, or June 30th? So they've already got 2, right? Kenny Menchie and Zion Fowler, quarterback and wide receiver respectively, are committed already. Menchie's got his official visit set. He announced that a little while ago, I think. On June 2nd, he's going to be coming in. I haven't seen anything from Fowler yet. We'll have to check with him and see when he's visiting. But with 30 official visitors coming in, I think it's safe to expect at least 8 commitments during the month of June. I would say I'll be shocked if Pitt hits June 30th with less than 10 commitments. And I'm guessing the number will probably be closer to 12, 13. Wouldn't even surprise me to see 14 or 15. Are they going to get half of the guys who visit this month to commit? Maybe. It's absolutely possible. Because here's the thing, all right? And this isn't talked about as much on either side, either like the negative side or the positive side. Other than I think last week we talked about the locals and why Pitt maybe wasn't getting as much traction with the local recruits. Like, I think Pitt is booming with kids outside of this area. I think Pitt's recruiting is going really, really well. I think Pitt is laying a foundation right now to have a great month of June. I mean, a great month. I texted with a source the other day. I was saying something about this recruit or that recruit, and they said it's going to be a good month. It's going to be a really good month, and I think it is. And you can go down this list of the guys we have confirmed right now of what 23. I think I said. And yeah, I think there's only what 1, 2, 3, 4. There are only 3 4-star prospects currently scheduled to take their official visits in June right now. I think there was another who asked, Coaster King asked if any more 4-stars are going to take their official visits in June. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple more come in there. I don't know if those 4-stars are going to commit. Maybe 1 or 2 might. But I think there's a whole bunch of these 3-star guys who are good prospects. So like Jalen Smith is a great example. This is a linebacker prospect out of Georgia. He's got close to 40 offers. And, just rolling down the list here of his offers: LSU, Louisville, Maryland, Miami, Mississippi State, Oregon, Pitt, Purdue, Tennessee, Texas, USC, 2 of Pitt's favorite schools right now, Texas and USC, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, West Virginia. He's got close to 40 offers, and he set up 2 official visits, and those 2 were Pitt and Tennessee. Those were the first 2 visits he set up, and I think that indicates a little bit of what his interest level is in the Panthers. And he's going to be at Pitt on the final official visit weekend of the month, actually. He's going to be here the weekend, June 24th to June 26th. So a guy like him, he's a 3-star recruit. But you watch his film, he doesn't look like a 3-star prospect. You look at his offer sheet, it's not the offer sheet of a 3-star prospect. That's a big-time recruit. And he's a guy who's got serious interest in Pitt. He's a high-priority target for a lot of schools in the country. And when it came time to start scheduling his official visits, he knew he wanted Pitt to be one of them, right off the bat. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of momentum that Pitt has nationally. And we saw it through the spring, right? We saw it throughout the spring when Pitt loaded up the official visit or unofficial visit list and brought in kids from all over the place. Kids coming up from Georgia, kids coming up from Florida, from Alabama, in addition to the usual area of Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, D.C., Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania. And those were unofficial visits where kids were just coming on their own dime. They paid for their flight, they paid for their hotel, they paid for their food. That's a sign of interest. We always go back and forth. What should we believe? And sometimes you'll say, well, don't believe what a recruit says, believe what he does, or believe this or believe that. Look, if a kid's spending money and his family is spending their money to go visit a school, you can bank on it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not spending their money to go visit a school they're not interested in. You got to have pretty serious, genuine interest to buy the plane ticket, to pay for the hotel, to pay for the food, to take time out, to use your weekend or whatever it is that you're going and take time out of your schedule to go visit this school in March or April. You have to be pretty serious about a school. And Pitt's visitor list for the spring was a pretty serious list of recruits. And now that's carrying over into June. And you're seeing these guys that they're lining up for the official visits. And you're seeing the quality of recruits who are planning to come in. And when I look down this list of 23 prospects, I see guys that I think Pitt could realistically land that are going to make for a really strong recruiting class. We've said it all along. That a strong season translates to the next year's recruiting class. That's what's coming. And I think the pieces are falling into place. And I mean, getting Kenny Menchie early is big. I think it's good to have the quarterback on board. I think that's a strong move to make. And that can help position you to recruit other guys when you've got the quarterback already in the class. But I think you're going to get to June 30th, and I would set the over-under at total commitments 12.5. Yeah, maybe 13.5. 12.5, and I would bet the over. 13.5. It's close. But I think they're going to clean up this month. And really, I mean, it could even push above 15 total that they end up with by June 30th. I think it's going to be that kind of June. I think they're going to be turning guys away. I really do. I think they're going to get their fair share. And I think there are guys that are going to surprise. You know what I mean? Like you look at a kid like Kenny Johnson, wide receiver at Dallastown, in York, Pennsylvania, Dallastown High School. If I told you there's a recruit at York, in York, Pennsylvania, at Dallastown High School, has an offer from Pitt and an offer from Penn State, and he's got official visits set to both, and he's been to Penn State at least 4 or 5 times. I mean, never mind all that information, all that extra information. He's from York, Pennsylvania, and he's got an official visit set to Penn State. Where's he going? You guys can do the math on that. But I don't think Pitt's all that much out of it. As a matter of fact, they're getting an official visit from Kenny Johnson in the first weekend of June. And he's also going to West Virginia, and he's going to Rutgers, and he's going to Penn State. Now, Penn State is considered to be the favorite, but I don't think it's they're as far ahead as you would assume for a kid from where he's from in Eastern PA. And I think Pitt has done a good job with him. He took an unofficial visit here in the spring, and now he's coming back for an official. They're making inroads with kids all over the place, even kids that they might not have as good. You might not expect them to have had as good a chance with. And I just think it's going to be a really, really good month. I do. Royce Beacom says, is Pitt the only team in the ACC with 4 guards with just 1 year of eligibility remaining? I can't answer that, Royce. I don't know what the other teams in the ACC look like, but it is interesting, and I hadn't really thought about the experience angle yet of Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton, Nike Sabani, Greg Elliott. Greg Elliott is going to be in his 6th year. Nelly Cummings is going into his 6th year, right? Because he had to sit out the year when he transferred from Bowling Green to Colgate. Or Jamarius Burton, how many years is Burton in his 5th year now? Let me look it up. I should know this off the top of my head, but why is it not as easy to find? Anyway, he's been around a long time, and Nike Sabandi has been around a long time. I mean, these guys are all 5th or 6th year players, using their super senior year, using their final year of eligibility. It's a veteran backcourt. It's a veteran backcourt, more so than any of the past few years. Anything Jeff Capel has had. Jeff Capel's not going to walk out and say, we're a young team. With Blake Hinson, with all these veteran guards, with John Hughley. Yeah, there's youth in the group. The Diaz-Graham twins. Nate Santos is still a 2nd-year player. Fede Federico, his 1st year in major college basketball after playing a year of JUCO. They're young, but the 7 out of 11 guys on this team have at least 3 years of experience, or are going into their 3rd year of experience of college basketball. And that's Will Jeffress is the only one going into his 3rd year. Everybody else is I guess Hughley's going into his 3rd year too. This is not a young team. This is a team with experience, and that should make them better, you would think. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Oh, we got a super chatter. Got him. Michael B says, hi, Chris. A little off topic, but I'm always curious. Are you a Pirates, Steelers, or Pens fan? Pens fan, do you watch the team's games, or are you mainly just a Pitt fan only? I've never seen you discuss the other local teams. Well, I don't really talk about the other local teams because I do Pitt stuff. I tend to think that's the appeal here, is that this show is about Pitt, Excuse me. So I keep an eye on Penguins, keep an eye on Steelers, keep an eye on Pirates. I mean, it's effectively a Steelers shirt that I have on here. It doesn't say Steelers. I keep an eye on all that stuff. I have interest in all that stuff. But I mean, my focus professionally is on Pitt. It's what I do every day, obviously, at Panther-Lair.com, and it's what this show is about. I feel like you can go a lot of places and get Steelers talk, Pirates talk, Penguins talk of varying quality and and interest, in a lot of different places. But I don't think there's very many places where you can go to get really good Pitt talk. And I like to think that's what we have here. I like to think this is a pretty unique spot for Pitt fans to get Pitt talk that they can't really get, really anywhere else. I like to think that, and I mean, I'm not trying to talk us up too much, but I like to think that we're pretty unique in that regard. You know, if you want Pitt, or if you want Penguins talk or Pirates talk or Steelers talk, there are places to go for that. If you want Pitt talk, this is the place to go. And I think we're kind of unique in that regard. So I hope you guys appreciate it. I appreciate you guys coming and checking it out and hanging out every week. Couple of comments about I should have looked up. I apologize about pronouncing his name. Siku Jawara, the guard transfer from Weber State, who is visiting this week. Originally from Spain, he's played a couple years at Weber State. He was at Loyola Marymount, as a freshman, and then he plays the last 2 years at Weber State. He's a career 40% three-point shooter, shot 42.6% last season, averaged fewer attempts per game than Nelly Cummings, 4.7 attempts per game. In his career, he's averaged 3.6 attempts per game, but he's a 40% shooter. And that would be a guard, another veteran guard, and someone who would be, probably the best shooter on the team. Certainly historically, career numbers, he would be the best shooter on the team. Mike S. says Jawara would be the best guard of the bunch if he's added. Mad Dog XNE DNDND says we need to land Jawara. 42% from three-point shooting. He's very talented. It would be a very good addition. I think so. I think he would fit in really well with what they need here. I think another veteran guard in this group and another guy who can shoot like that is key, particularly if you're going to end up with, with the forward situation being what it is right now. Unless they find another quality, experienced power forward to join this roster, if you're going to go into the season expecting your main minutes at the four to go to Blake Hinson, Will Jeffress, and the Diaz-Graham twins, or one of the Diaz-Graham twins, if that's your plan, is to go into the season with those guys as the answer at power forward, then you're probably going to be playing a lot of three guards. Particularly if you need to keep Blake Hinson at the four, if you need to keep Will Jeffress at the four, you're going to play a lot of three guards. So you might as well get another experienced guard and a guy who can shoot. And Jawara seems to be that kind of option. It seemed like they have a really good chance. I think he also visited George Washington, and George Washington just got another guard commit. So, it would seem like Pitt's in the driver's seat there, but we'll see. We'll see. But it looks from the outside, it looks like a pretty good addition if they could land him. Let's see here. Talk is Pitt says Pitt needs to land Oakenlola. Yeah, Samson Oakenlola, a 2023 offensive line prospect, four-star guy, one of the best offensive line prospects in the country, certainly one of the best offensive line prospects in the Northeast. He's the younger brother of Samuel Oakenlola, who's a freshman at Pitt this year. He enrolled early, a four-star defensive end, one of the highest-rated recruits in Pitt's 2022 recruiting class. Yeah, Samson Oakenlola is a top target for Pitt, just like he's a top target for a lot of schools. They do need to get some big-time offensive line prospects. I think they do need to, at some point here, I think they need to take a big step in terms of talent, particularly along the offensive line. At some point, you continue to have success like this. You've built stability. You've got this foundation and this program established. At some point, you need to take a next step in terms of the level of talent that you land, in terms of the level of talent that you're bringing in. You need to go get big-time offensive line prospects, and that's one of the hardest spots to get the big-time prospects. Probably, I would say quarterback and offensive line are the two spots where the 4- and 5-star guys don't tend to, drop too far away from those top schools every year. And that's how those top schools stay the top schools, because they have the 4- and 5-star quarterbacks and offensive linemen. I think you can get 4-star wide receivers, 4-star running backs, 4-star defensive linemen. At schools, a lot of schools can get 4-star linebackers or DBs, but the O-linemen and the quarterbacks tend to end up going to those biggest schools, those sort of usual suspect schools. And, at some point, if Pitt continues to win, and as Pitt continues to win, they need to break through and get guys like like Samson Oakenlola. And I don't know if they're going to get him. He's a tough guy to read. His brother, Samuel Oakenlola, was a tough guy to read. They don't give up much in recruiting interviews. They don't give up much in terms. I don't even know if they give up much to the coaches. I've gotten the impression over the year, in the last year, trying to follow Samuel Oakenlola's recruitment, I got the impression that the coaches didn't know much about. Coaches. A lot of schools weren't really sure where he was leaning or what he was going to do. And so those two brothers, they keep it very close to the vest. And so it's tough to get a read on it. We'll see where he ends up taking visits and that kind of thing. But yeah, big time offensive line prospect, one of the best in the country, and the kind of guy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Pitt's going to get him, but they need to get guys like him to really replenish the talent and elevate the program. Not just to keep it where it is, but to push it to another level and keep it moving up. I agree about that. They do need to do that. Hog Muncher says, Chris, have you heard why Addison is looking to leave? Is it just NIL money, or is he not a believer in Slovis and Coach Signetti? All right, there's a few levels to this question on Jordan Addison. We haven't talked about Jordan Addison at all on this show. I guess we have to, it's being reported that his top two are Texas and USC. I guess that makes sense. Those are the schools we've heard talked about the most with him. We haven't really talked about him at all on this week's episode. I didn't know if we were going to get away without it, but thought we would try. I'll say it flat out. I don't know Jordan Addison's intentions. Talk to this person, talk to that person, gotten different impressions from them, This source thinks this source thinks that. My gut instinct is that it's about the money. But there are sources who have said no, it's not. It's not just about the money. He was getting a bunch of money at Pitt. He's going to get more money at USC, or he's going to get more money at Texas, but he was getting a bunch of money at Pitt. It's not really just about the money, that there's something more to it. I don't buy the concerns about Frank Signetti, Taekwon Underwood, or Keaton Slovis. I don't buy it. I just have a hard time with it when we're talking about, he doesn't want to learn a new offense. He doesn't want to learn a new offense. He doesn't feel like he's going to be used in the new offense. Man, Frank Signetti is not an idiot. Of course, Jordan Addison would have gotten 90 targets in Frank Signetti's offense. Of course he would have. Frank Signetti, the thing he did when he came to Pitt in 2009 was said, who are our best playmakers? Oh, it's Dion Lewis, and it's Doran Dickerson, and it's Jonathan Baldwin. We're going to get the ball to those three guys more than we get the ball to the other guys because they're the ones who can score touchdowns. And they ended up winning 10 games. Of course, Jordan Addison is going to get the ball. And so there's, some people suggested, well, there's all this talk about going back to the running game. He feels like he's not going to get enough targets to, help him become the first-round draft pick. He's a first-round draft pick. He is a first-round draft pick. And Frank Signetti would have gotten him the ball enough that it would not have hurt his draft stock. And wherever you're going to have a new coordinator. You're going to have a new receivers coach. You're going to have a new quarterback. I guess if you go to Texas, you have the same receivers coach. But you're going to be dealing with new people in all those positions no matter where you go. Whether you stay at Pitt or whether you go to another school. I suppose you could follow Mark Whipple to Nebraska. I suppose you could follow Brendan Marion to Texas. You can't quite follow Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, not yet, but maybe in a year. So I don't buy any of that. But I also don't know Jordan. I can't read Jordan Addison's mind. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know what his aims are. I think he wants to be a first-round draft pick. I think he would have been a first-round draft pick at Pitt. I think he'll probably be a first-round draft pick at Texas. Or he'll be a first-round draft pick at USC. I think he's that special. So why is he leaving? I don't know. Maybe he didn't feel like he fit in with the team. Maybe he felt like he didn't fit in Pittsburgh. Maybe he just didn't feel like being here anymore. Maybe in the course of 3 months, his opinion on everything changed. Because it was 4 months ago, when he told me on this YouTube channel, that he's going to finish his career at Pitt. It changed. And maybe it was spring ball that it changed. Maybe it was always going to change. Maybe he wasn't being honest that day. Maybe it just changed his mind. Maybe he just had a change of heart. These things happen. So I think it's about all the factors. I think the money he's getting offered in NIL deals is probably really significant, and that's a factor. I think the possibility of going to a place like USC is a factor. I think the possibility of going to a place like Texas is a factor. I think all these things are factors. And so it's probably not just one thing. It's probably all of it. And it's led to the situation. Well, we had to get to it at some point. Now we talked about Jordan Addison. Christian Kosmak says maybe he realized he's not going to get 70% of the targets anymore. Did he get 70% of the targets last year? I don't think he did. I know it's. I'm sure you were intending to deal in hyperbole, but just to do a quick look-see at the Jordan Addison numbers on Pro Football Focus. There were 508 passes thrown, and he had 144 targets. So that's 28% of the targets? Now, it's a huge target share. I mean, there's no question about it. Jordan Addison got a huge target share last year at Pitt. He would have gotten a huge target share again this year. Maybe instead of 28%, maybe he would have gotten 20%. But he would have gotten a huge target share. He would have had an opportunity for another 1,000-yard receiving season, an opportunity for another 12 touchdowns or something like that, and would have played well enough to have himself in the conversation for the Biletnikoff once again, and first-round draft pick. More importantly, a first-round draft pick. All of those things would have happened at Pitt. I have no doubt in my mind. As a matter of fact, the day after Kenny Pickett was taken by the Steelers, I wrote in the 3-2-1 column on Panther-Lair.com, in the one prediction section, because we do 3 questions we have, 3 things we know, 2 questions we have, 1 prediction. My one prediction was Pitt will have back-to-back first-round draft picks for the first time since the 1980s. That first-round draft pick being Jordan Addison. I was confident about it then. I'm confident about it now. Whether he's coming from Pitt, Texas, or USC, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's that good. I believe that. And I don't think there would have been anything Frank Signetti would have done that would have damaged his stock. Even if he only caught 80 passes, he would have still been one of the best receivers in college football. So, I don't know why. I don't know why he decided to go. Let's see here. Scrolling through a few more questions. Talkus Pitt says, who do you think will start at running back? I would pick Carter. I like Daniel Carter. I'm guessing you'll see Daniel Carter in more of a versatile role, H-back type of stuff, maybe even fullback. I'm a self-proclaimed, I will not deny it. I'm a Izzy Abanikanda, not even apologist, supporter, I guess. I mean, I've been on Izzy Abanikanda since he came in as a freshman. I thought he was a stud then. I thought he was a stud last year. And I think he has the potential to be a stud this year. I think he's built like an NFL running back. I think he's got great speed. I think he's got moves. I think he can catch passes. I think he is the most complete back on the team. Even more complete than Daniel Carter, who just popped up on the screen, conveniently. Right there he was. Carter's a big back. Abanikanda is a big back, but he's faster. He's not as big as Carter, but he's big enough. And he's fast. He's bigger than Vincent Davis, and he's got great speed that is comparable to Vincent Davis. And I think Rodney Hammond is a really good back too. I think all 4 of those guys can do things, can make plays. I personally would like to see Izzy Abanikanda be the workhorse of the group, with the others mixed in. But I also think Vincent Davis is a senior this year. Izzy Abanikanda is a junior. Rodney Hammond's a sophomore. Daniel Carter's a redshirt junior. So these guys have all played. They've got experience. I think they know how to approach the game. I think they know how to play the game. I think they know what to do when they come into a game. so that even if you want to mix and match to keep guys fresh and not get anybody hurt and keep everybody rolling, I think they could handle that. I sort of feel like it's a younger back that needs to be able to get into a routine and get carry after carry after carry to kind of settle in and go, even though Rodney Hammond didn't need that last year. But I think these guys, since they're a little bit older, could bounce in and out and not really lose a beat. We're going to go with Vincent Davis on this series. We're going to go with Izzy Abanikanda on this series. We're going to go with Rodney Hammond on this series. Oh, this series just passed like play number 8. Let's flip out Abanikanda for Hammond and hit him with that. Let's flip out Hammond for Carter. We'll hit him with the thunder of it all. Let's put Carter and Hammond on the field together. Let's put Carter and Davis on the field together. Let's put Abanikanda and Hammond on the field together. I think there's a lot you can do with this running back core. I think it's a talented group. I really do. I do not think the issues with Pitt's running game in the past few years has been the talent of the running backs, particularly last year. I think they were good enough last year. They just didn't run it enough. And I'm not really going to complain too much about that because it's a team that won 11 games, won the ACC, set records, and had a Heisman Trophy finalist. So could they have run the ball more? Yes. Would that have helped them beat Miami or Western Michigan? I don't know. Probably not. I don't think handing the ball off more would have caused Pitt to tackle better in the first quarter against Miami. I don't think it would have caused anything to change with the non-safety call against Miami. And it really wouldn't have had anything to do with... So Kenny Pickett threw a pick with like 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter from the Miami 31, if you recall this. It was on a 2nd and 18 because he got sacked on first down. Maybe if they try to run the ball there. Maybe if they're a little more committed to the run and they've got it established, they can hand it off there on first down from the, whatever they would have been at, the Miami 23. They could hand it off instead of taking a sack that pushes them back to 2nd and 18. Kenny Pickett throws an interception on the next play. So maybe it could have changed that, and that would have ended up winning the game. But you get my point. Their offense was not the problem last year. Their defense wasn't the problem either. They had a great season. There weren't problems. Not everything was 100% perfect, but they didn't really have too many weaknesses or vulnerabilities. Their biggest weakness and vulnerability came when they were on their third string quarterback playing in the Peach Bowl. So I digress. I think this running back room is really talented. I think these guys can all play, and I think you can mix and match them. You can pull them in and out and get a lot out of the running backs, both in the ground game and in the passing game. Let's see here. Longo Calrissian says Jonathan Baldwin had over half the team's receiving yards when Frank Signetti was here, and Doran Dickerson was a distant number 2. Addison would have gotten the ball. Yeah, I mean, again, Frank Signetti's not an idiot. He knows Jordan Addison would be the best player on the team. He would give him the ball early and often. Will Z says the Texas wide receiver room is stacked. If anything, his target percentage will be way less there. Yeah, and that's another thing why I don't think... it's another reason why I just don't know if I buy into the idea that Addison was worried he was going to lose targets or wasn't going to be emphasized enough or wasn't going to be. I mean, I'm a big fan of Konate Mumfield and Jared Wayne and Jaden Bradley and Jalen Barton and all these guys. I think this. I've talked about this. Bub Meads. I think they're going to have a really good receiver room even without Addison. But he was still far and away the clear number 1 receiver and the best receiver on the team and the best overall player on the team. He was going to get the ball a lot. And I don't know what the receiver room looks like at Texas. But I got to think they've recruited some pretty talented players. And USC also. Christian Kosmak says another number 8 in the first round if he stays healthy. That'll be interesting to see. I don't know if I think Kalijah Cansey is a first round pick or not. I'm not sure. He's a smaller D tackle, and we know smaller D tackles can make it work. I don't know if he's shown. And Charlie Partridge has talked about this. He talked about it in the spring. That don't know if Kalijah Cansey has shown the ability to do everything the way Aaron Donald does everything. He can rush the passer. He can get into the backfield and make plays against the passing game and get to the quarterback, but can he also stand up against the run? You know what I mean? Can he do those technique things and understand the game the way that Aaron Donald understands it to make an impact, whether it's run or pass, whether he's getting double teamed or ISO or whatever it is, zone block? Can he handle all of those things? It's the funniest thing to say because he was a first team All ACC player last year and a third team All American. But I think Kalijah Kancey could potentially have a breakout season this year. And I mean, how do you break out after you were a first team All Conference player and a third team All American? How do you break out? Well, I think he can do it by putting up even better numbers and being an even more complete defensive tackle and a more complete defensive player and more complete defensive force in 2022. And I think he's totally capable of it. I don't know if he's going to end up as a first round draft pick, but I think he's capable of elevating his game. John Leffler says, what is Vincent Davis's role with Frank Signetti as the offensive coordinator? I think, I don't know. But I think that Signetti, again, is a smart coach. And I think he understands how to use guys. I think he has a good feel for how to use players. I think he has a good feel for identifying talent and identifying guys' skill sets and then using those guys the right way. You know what I mean? A guy like Doran Dickerson. He figured out a way to get him the ball and use him and get a lot of plays out of him. He figured out what to do with Dion Lewis. He figured out how to manage Dion Lewis and Ray Graham in 2009 because Ray Graham was really good in 2009 too. Not just Dion Lewis. Ray Graham was really good that year in his limited opportunities. So I think he'll find a role for Vincent Davis. I think he understands types of backs. I think when he came in, he wanted a big running back. And I think that's why Daniel Carter got so much emphasis this spring, got so much work this spring, got so much good publicity this spring, is because Frank Signetti wanted a bigger back. But I think he also appreciates the smaller back, the fast guy, and will use him appropriately. I think Signetti's going to do really well with this offense and with this running game. Christian Kosmak says, Izzy and Hammond are the most game-breaking running backs on the roster. I won't disagree with you. If you ask me to order the four running backs in terms of the most talented, those two would be at the top. I still think, like Will Z says, Chris Peak is the president of the Izzy to the Hizzy fan club. Admittedly, I think he's the man. I think Izzy Abanikanda is the man. I think he's going to have a big season this year and go to the NFL after this. That's really what I believe. I think he's capable of that, and it's what I expect to happen. Rodney Hammond really impressed me this past season as a freshman. I didn't think Rodney Hammond was going to have the kind of year as a freshman that he did have. He blew me away in limited opportunities. And so I think, if you can give him enough opportunities, I think he can make a lot of plays too. So, yeah, I won't disagree that those two are the most game-breaking running backs on the roster. They're both tough. They're hard to tackle. And when they get in open space, they can really take off and go. Izzy Abanikanda showed that with his kickoff return for a touchdown. And I think that's the kind of talent those guys have. Will Z says, speaking of the run game, what do you think the key is to making the run game work? Offensive line improving, running back talent, use of a decent fullback, the scheme. To some extent, commitment to it. Andre Powell said this spring, he was like, it's not like we didn't. He said, we ran the ball well last year, we just didn't do it a lot. And that's true. And it makes sense. You've got Kenny Pickett, a guy who earned a spot in New York City as a Heisman Trophy finalist. It makes sense that you would rely on him. You've got Jordan Addison, a guy who won the Biletnikoff Award. It would make sense that you would rely on those guys to carry your offense. Lucas Kroll had a really good season. Gavin Bartholomew, Jared Wayne played well. You can understand why Mark Whipple's, sort of preference for the passing game aside, you can understand why he would rely on it last season because he had the guys there. And so he didn't use the running game as much. It really was. I remember looking up some of the stats, and Pitt was among the better in the ACC in yards per carry and stats like that. But total rushing attempts, middle of the pack. Despite playing an extra game, one game more than everyone. Their total rushing attempts were middle of the pack. Their rushing attempts per game were near the bottom of the ACC. I really think they just didn't do it a lot. And why would you? You have Kenny Pickett. You have Jordan Addison. You have all those guys. But, when you ask what can be done to improve it, I think just having a greater commitment to it. Now, there is a debate to be had about how much commitment should you have. There is a debate to be had about if you have the opportunity to, strike first and strike hard and, take shots and run up a bunch of points through the passing game, shouldn't you do it? And I think the answer is yes. But I don't think they were bad at running the ball last year. I mean, think about some of the games that they closed out. They have like an 11-minute drive against Virginia Tech. I think they closed out the Georgia Tech game with running the ball and running the clock down. Clemson, they ran the ball against Clemson in the fourth quarter to try and ice the clock, and some of it included a Kenny Pickett scramble or two. But they ran the ball when they wanted to. They just didn't want to all that often. So the biggest thing they can change this year, just commitment to the run. Christian Kosmak says if the starting quarterback can efficiently get through the reads, there are enough weapons for the offense to be even more explosive. Gavin Bartholomew could be primed for a breakout season. So Gavin Bartholomew is a really interesting guy to me. When you look at what he did last year and how he lined up, I'm going to actually bring his I have his stats on Pro Football Focus here. I want to bring this up because it was pretty interesting what he did. Bring up his snaps by position. Oh, hold on. I lost the page. Because Gavin Bartholomew did a whole lot of playing in the backfield. He played, according to Pro Football Focus, he played about, 437, 468, plus 21, about 489, give or take, snaps on offense last year. It's close to 500. About 200 of those, he was lined up in the backfield. So he had just as many snaps in line. He had 200 snaps in line as like an inline tight end. And he had 193 snaps in the backfield. So my point in this is that Gavin Bartholomew, and Will Z, you're saying it, my fear is that Gavin was more of an H-back role than a tight end. Hopefully he's ready to be the guy. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that Gavin Bartholomew spent a lot of time in the backfield last year. Not the bulk of his snaps, but close to half of his offensive snaps. He was lined up in the backfield. Not lining up as a tight end. Not running downfield. Not doing those things that Lucas Krull did. And that's not to say that Gavin Bartholomew is not capable of doing those things. Just that he hasn't really done it yet. He didn't really do it last year. And he's going to have to step into that role this year because he is the number one tight end. He's the main guy. And they're going to have to use him to go down the field. He can't just catch passes in the flat and run up the sideline. And he was really good at that. And they should do that too. But he can't just do that this year. He's got to branch out. He's got to expand his game. Now, Christian, to your points about the weapons on this offense, look, I've talked about it. Like, even without Jordan Addison, I like this receiving core a whole lot. I love the running backs. You just heard me say that. And I think, tight end depth is a little bit thin. There's not a whole lot of it there. But if they can get Gavin Bartholomew to play as a complete tight end and just get somebody else to step up behind him, whether it's Jake Renda or it's Kai Wright, somebody, go get a transfer even. They've got a few open scholarship spots. Go see if there's another transfer tight end lurking out there that you could bring in who could help contribute. But absolutely, I think with the offensive line protecting for the quarterback and all the weapons that the quarterback has, this offense should be able to put up points and score a lot again. And then maybe play some ball control with the running game. We'll see. We'll definitely, let's see, it's May 18th, so we're almost to June. Boy, by the time we get to June, July, August, we got about 3.5 months till the season starts. Coming up on that 3-month mark real fast, and I can't wait. It's getting there. And throughout all the time between now and the start of the season, we're going to have this show every Wednesday night, 1 hour or more. We're over an hour already tonight. We're going to be talking Pitt sports right here. All right, you're a Pitt fan. You want Pitt sports talk. This is the place to go to get it. Okay, accept no substitutions, accept no imitations. This is the place for Pitt sports talk. You don't want to talk about all those other... I mean, you do want to talk about Penguins and Pirates and Steelers and all that stuff, but you don't have to wade through it to find stuff about Pitt. This is the place where it's only Pitt. And of course, that's the case at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. Go check it out. Panther-Lair.com. I hope to talk to you on the message boards. Thanks to everybody who joined the live chat tonight. Thanks to everybody who listens to the podcast, watches the videos through the week. We appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun, as always. So have a great rest of the night. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you next Wednesday night for the best Pitt sports talk you're going to find. The Panther-Lair Show right here. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.